My father passed away, and a year has passed since then. After the death of my father, my mother was also engulfed in deep sorrow, but recently, she has finally begun to smile again and her former vitality is returning. One day, as we were regaining our tranquility, my husband's unilateral action threw our household into chaos. "Your mother approved, so it should be fine," my husband said, but I countered. "How can you think there's no problem? This is our home. Why sacrifice our family to accommodate yours?" Unbeknownst to me, my husband had invited his parents, who were living with his brother and his wife, to our home. Moreover, my father's room, which had been left untouched, was tidied up without my consent. With my husband speaking his mind freely and his inconsiderate parents, our home became uncomfortable. Because of this situation, my mother began to go out more often. I cannot accept this situation under any circumstances. I must get my in-laws out of our house. This is a story about the crisis of my home being taken over by my husband and his family after my father's death. My name is Wendy. I am turning 40 this year. I married Greg when I was 28, and I have a medical condition that makes it difficult for me to work outside. Although I used to work full-time when I was younger, my intermittent health issues often caused inconvenience to others, so I later switched to working from home. However, my income is dependent on my health and is unstable every month. Thus, living alone was not a viable option for me. Before marriage, I lived with my working parents, helping with household chores while working. After marrying Greg, we started a new life in a rented apartment, saving money gradually with plans to eventually buy our own home. However, our situation changed when I heard that Greg's brother had built a 2-generation house to live with his parents. My parents suggested that we live with my parents in their renovated family home. They were concerned about my unstable income and the difficulty of buying a house just for the two of us. While my parents' proposal was reassuring, living with his wife's family was not easy for Greg. With this in mind, I planned to respect Greg's wishes. But he was excited about the idea of my parents providing all the funds and readily accepted the suggested living arrangement. For about 10 years, the four of us lived relatively harmoniously. Despite my father's strictness, my cheerful husband was always considerate around him. And my parents tried not to interfere too much, allowing Greg to relax when not with the family. Despite my unstable income and physical inability to have children, my husband and I lived without major conflicts, supporting each other thanks to my parents' help. I am determined to repay this kindness. Out of gratitude, I acquired a qualification anticipating future caregiving needs. But my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack before I could use it. My mother couldn't accept the reality of this sudden event, lost her appetite, and was unstable for a while. During that time, I focused on supporting my mother, but Greg's behavior began to change. After the renovation was carried out 10 years ago, my family home changed from 2 stories to 3. The first floor had a bedroom and toilet exclusively for my parents, and the spare room became my father's office space. The second floor housed the kitchen, laundry space, and bathroom shared by the whole family, but the living space next to the kitchen was mainly used by my parents. The third floor was reserved for us, with a toilet and 2 rooms for our use, serving as a living area and bedroom. Normally, we spent our time on the 3rd floor, living our lives there. However, after my father's death, Greg started spending time on the 2nd floor for some reason. "Why are you watching TV here? This is my mom's area." Despite my repeated reminders, Greg retorted, "If your mother comes, I'll move. She's not here now, so it's fine to use it," and continued to occupy the space. He began to relax in the 2nd floor living room daily, occasionally drinking and falling asleep there. He said he would yield if my mother asked, but she became reticent and stopped coming to the 2nd floor when she knew Greg was there. No matter how much I talked to him, Greg wouldn't listen to me, and after my father's absence, he began to act selfishly, leading to frequent clashes between us. Our conversations dwindled, and then the worst happened. My father passed away, and a year has passed since then. Immediately after my father's death, my mother was also engulfed in deep sorrow, but recently, she has finally begun to smile again, and her former vitality is returning. "Huh? What's with this luggage?" However, one night, when my mother and I returned from shopping, the storeroom on the 1st floor was wide open, and all the belongings from my father's study had disappeared. In their place, an unfamiliar old chest of drawers and bed had been set up, and there were mountains of cardboard boxes. To investigate the reason behind these changes, I rushed to the living room on the 2nd floor, where not only Greg but also my mother-in-law were present, and my father-in-law was drinking with Greg. When I called Greg out to the hallway to ask him what was going on, he said, "My mom isn't getting along with my brother's wife, so I had no choice but to invite them here." I decided to let them use the storeroom. The response I got was more self-centered than usual. Why didn't you tell me? We haven't been talking much lately, and if we did, it would just start a fight. He said that, justifying his lack of consultation because our relationship had cooled off. Where are my dad's belongings? You didn't throw them away, did you? Yes, I threw them away. They were just in the way. Without a word to us, Greg had disposed of my father's items. I couldn't hide my anger at his actions, yelling loud enough for my in-laws and mother to hear. Tell them to leave immediately. Okay. Bring back everything you threw away. All right. Despite my anger, Greg responded calmly, nodding but unlikely to take any action. Whenever a fight broke out, he would just say something to settle things. Listen to me, please. Wendy. As I raised my voice in frustration, I heard a voice from behind. Turning around, I saw my mother coming up the stairs, quietly signaling with her finger to her lips and shaking her head. It's late, let them stay tonight, she said, choosing to be considerate of my in-laws. Later, even when I tried to talk to Greg, he avoided the conversation, using his parents as an excuse. The next morning, while I was reminiscing about my father, Greg passed out drunk in the living room. The table was cluttered with dirty dishes, adding to my frustration. As I was about to start doing the laundry to avoid cleaning up, my mother-in-law threw some laundry at me, saying, Wendy, can you take care of this too? Wendy, you are wonderful. Not only do you wash for your own family, but you also take care of your parents' laundry. Amy only takes care of her own family, she complained, naturally expecting me to do the laundry and expressing dissatisfaction with Greg's brother's wife. Does she really intend to live here? This is the house that my parents built. After my mother-in-law left, I tried to wake up Greg, who was sleeping in the living room, but he was groggy and wouldn't wake up. Eventually, I returned to the bedroom on the third floor and called Greg's brother. Yeah, I've heard about it from Greg. You told me he informed you, but I was not aware of any of this. This is the Owen family house, so it's difficult for the Anderson family members to live here. Please come and take them back. Handing over the laundry, I felt a sense of urgency. If I didn't act quickly, they would end up staying longer. I requested they be picked up, but Greg's brother immediately replied, I've told Greg as well, but it seems the relationship between Amy and our mother is beyond repair, and it looks like our mother doesn't want to live here either. I'm sorry, but you'll have to manage. Wait, just a minute. Ignoring my words, he unilaterally pushed the responsibility onto me, cutting off the conversation. Both brothers were beyond my control. Despite my concerns, I headed back to the second floor where Greg was. Mom. My mother was in the living room, tidying up the messy room even though she had just woken up. I'll clean up here, so Mom, please go wash your face. I should have left it to Greg, but in the end, I had to handle it myself. While my mother was in the washroom, I was doing the dishes when I realized Greg had woken up and was opening the refrigerator behind me. I drained the water and immediately resumed the conversation. Did you really get rid of Dad's belongings? I asked, to which Greg replied, How many times do I have to say it? Yes, I threw them away. Without consulting us. How can you do such a thing without involving us, the family? I protested. Because unused things are in the way, he said. Is this really a difference of opinion? Or is it influenced by his relationship with his father-in-law? My mother and I wanted to keep my father's belongings a bit longer, but Greg easily let go of them. It feels like no matter how much we talk, he won't understand. I had almost given up on expecting anything from Greg, but imagining my mother being sad again leaves me endlessly troubled. I've advised you not to throw away other people's things without permission, but Greg remained indifferent and gave no response. And I called your brother, I said, to which Greg turned around in surprise and asked, why? I asked him to come pick them up. This is our family's home, so it's impossible for us to live together with your parents. Well, he said. The moment I relayed the conversation with his brother, a deep frown formed on Greg's forehead, and he raised his voice. Are you belittling my parents? I clearly stated that there's nowhere else for them to go. Overwhelmed by his angry words, I reflexively counted. You say there's nowhere to go, but isn't your brother's house an option? Why not choose that? However, Greg calmly yet firmly replied, they can't go back there. To which I responded, then, they should find another place. This house was built by my parents. But Greg didn't listen and cut off the conversation midway, leaving the room. As he was leaving, he let slip, you always emphasize it's your parents' house, but don't forget, it's also my home. His words were true. This house was undoubtedly a place for Greg as well. If I continued to insist it's solely my parents' house, it might make Greg uncomfortable. However, despite bringing up the subject of rent in the past, my parents have always refused to accept it. You'll have to maintain this house on your